Greetings. The past few days have been a mix of cope, excuses, yapping, and fun times in between. But in the midst of all that, my Bloodborne cope has surged to the point where I finally decided to actually start playing Bloodborne on PC and in 60 FPS. Well, sort of anyways. I haven't played the game since I platinumed it on the PS4, but I can confirm that it is still my personal favourite FromSoft game, with Elden Ring and Sekiro being a close second, with Dark Souls 1 being the most influential and impactful of the bunch. And no, I haven't got around to playing Elden Ring Night Rain or Armored Core 6 yet, but I will get around to it in the 41st millennium perhaps, so hang in there, okay? Moving on from Peakborn, it's time to now get into the real games here. And by that I mean the kind of games that for sure will surge in the brain rot meter the moment that you start seeing it. Well, as for me, there is no brain rot to begin with, because there is no brain to rot. However, to help you survive the infinite rot that you're about to see here, I will supply a micro dosage of Bloodbornium across the video so that you will remain relatively alive just by the image of Peak, so that you can see from beginning to end what I have to say in this video. So anyways, I decided to browse through the itch.io store and see what kind of projects I could dig up, more specifically Unreal stuff since I couldn't get enough of it in the last video. Then I saw the food that makes me feel good and guilty at the same time. Well, the last part is a lie. Pizza, as in infinite pizza. And when I saw the words infinite pizza, I got up out of my chair and was amazed at the idea of pizza that tastes good and would never run out. Of course though, this was in my head. The reality was that the way it presented itself was an endless runner style game that illustrated its visual presentation in a way that piqued my interest, and I decided to download the game and give it a try myself. And I have to say that I found Infinite Pizza oddly relaxing, weird, trippy, and interesting at the same time. Endless runner games are a genre that has had a rooted history in arcades and older consoles back in the earlier generations. But the prime years of flash games and mobile gaming would help see a ginormous return of endless runners or infinite runner games. The variety of titles that you find in this genre are endless, with endless clones of those titles that came before, where you'll always have options at the tap of a button on your phone. Some do stand out for better or worse, some have been used for social media shorts and brain rot content, and others try to at least do something unique with the endless runner loop. Temple Run and Doodle Jump were my go-tos during short breaks in my earlier life, and I would even slide in a bit of Alto's Adventure and Sonic Dash to mix it up somewhat. The general loop in these sort of games is that when you hop into an endless runner, you have these simple to get into controls and you just go at it for as long as humanly possible. Its arcade-like nature had players repeatedly perform the same actions, all the while dealing with randomized levels that would force the player to remain alert and to react rather than try to predict. These sort of games either go the simple to play or skill-based spectrum with, more mechanics on top of the existing gameplay, with some titles also overlapping on the approach. It does take a measure of skill though to get into the flow state with these sort of games and to be able to react cautiously for long periods of time, especially as it gradually gets more random and gets more chaotic. And endless runners generally do enough to keep the player engaged at all times, even when there are windows for catching your breath. Infinite Pizza is an endless runner, but with the concept of slicing into an infinitely descending pizza with no stop in sight. In the center, it'll infinitely warp and scale shapes in front of you, leaving behind tomatoes and tomato cans to block your infinite journey into the pizza. Infinite Pizza, like other endless runners, follows the golden rule of endless runners, which is to make them simple to play through controls. Initially, you can go forwards or backwards, but once you descend into the pizza, forward is the only direction that you'll be going in. However, you do have the option to strafe left or right, shoot your weapon to dispose of tomatoes, and even jump if you're not confident you can kill the tomatoes in time without, getting in line with it. In saying that though, do be careful when you shoot the weapon, because if you shoot it at a pizza wall, it will then ricochet and come right back to you, which can kill your run if you're not being careful. So yeah, be careful. Infinite Pizza, like other endless runners, revolves around what I call reactionary gameplay. The way I could describe it is where the skill-based gameplay hinges on the player's ability to react to dynamic situations that can change at a moment's notice. Multiplayer gaming in particular is king at this because with the presence of players, they make the loop unpredictable, even when there are players that you can read like a book. But with bots or AI-controlled enemies, you can eventually calculate their patterns, their pathfinding, which can be routed in time, and with levels that are fixed in their design, eventually you can memorize that design and it just becomes easier and easier as you repeatedly do the level over and over again. But in the context of endless runners, it creates unpredictability through randomization, and the randomized nature of this game makes it so that you can never truly predict how and when Infinite Pizza is going to shape itself as you go further in the run, in terms of how it will form the shapes or where the tomatoes and tomato cans will appear. It's a matter of just reacting to whatever is coming at you as quick as you can. I could turn a few corners, all of a sudden I could run into a dead end, killing my run, or tomatoes that could blindside me and end my run prematurely before I could go any further. These sort of conditions keep the gameplay random but still fresh on each run, so that the player trains their muscle memory and reaction time. I can't confidently say that endless runners will give you Jedi levels of precognition, but I find them to be a genre with the potential to be skill-based, all the while providing a zen-like state of mind where a flow state can be achieved. And they also provide a unique side of competitiveness that makes the player constantly compete against themselves, even if they're not doing it intentionally. Infinite Pizza has a magic to it that I'm still trying to figure out in terms of the technical aspects, but I have seen similar projects that play with the idea of creating an infinite loop around its levels in some pretty interesting ways. For example, Space Flux is an arena shooter that plays around with the idea of fractals, which are infinitely complex shapes that repeat, so that if you take, say, a Romanesco broccoli and you separate a piece from it, you still have a piece of Romanesco broccoli. If you split a copy of Bloodborne so that you can make a copy of Bloodborne 2, well then it wouldn't work because you would just have another copy of Bloodborne. Anyways, in Space Flux, it's impossible to leave the map because you will always just end up right back where you were before as you tried to go out of bounds. I really should dive into this game more in a future video perhaps, because it is one of the most unique arena shooters that I've seen. Another example is Marble Marcher that takes the existing loop of Marble games but also adds fractal physics and level design into them. I'll put links in the description for these sort of games if you're interested that explore the idea of, say, infinite level generation or fractal physics. It's some pretty cool stuff, and I'll definitely have to delve into it in my own time for more further analysis. Now, I can't fully discern if Infinite Pizza is also using the same approach with, say, the idea of using fractals, since I am still also learning other aspects of game dev myself in my own time, but I do find Infinite Pizza to be an interesting game to study despite its simple loop, and in general it's just a pretty interesting project that I found, even if it's pretty minuscule in comparison to, say, some other games in terms of what it offers. It's hard to say if I like the game itself, but I do love the idea of it. It creates this endless loop in a way that I haven't quite seen in other endless runners, or at least with the concept of pizza in mind. The controls aren't too complex and the randomization is pretty dynamic, which it should be in an endless runner, and it always feels good to have that higher score than what you did before, which is the biggest appeal behind games like this. The game is completely free and has gotten me interested in exploring further into the endless runner genre, because even though it is a genre I'm not madly in love with, it's still an opportunity to learn, and learning is something I've been enjoying more as I get older. Nevertheless, Infinite Pizza was a brief but interesting dive, but what would have added more flavor into the mix is if the developer had considered the possibility of adding different pizza flavors, even if it's in the guise of different levels, where the levels are just like pizza flavors. Like, imagine going from something basic like cheese pizza to supreme pizza or something like that, or perhaps even pineapple pizza for the Italians. Anyways, it's a cool concept that I really like, and that's all I can really say about it at this point. I'll put a link in the description for the game and also for the developers page, because there are also some other interesting titles from the developer that you should check out. Infinite Pizza is again free, so there's really no harm in giving it a go, especially if you're looking for an interesting endless runner experience. Stay safe everyone, and may the good blood guide your way.